Knowing that somebody is nasty, dangerous, and has the capacity to commit genuinely dangerous acts is one thing. But being able to identify, apprehend, and convict such a person is another thing entirely. The perpetrator in today's case was well known to authorities and had spent time in prison. And people were aware that he seemed to be a ticking time bomb. But when a young woman was sexually assaulted and murdered in an act of unmitigated rage, as she was beaten so severely and without restraint, suspicion wouldn't be enough to get this monster off the streets. In this case, we see how 21st century policing and old-fashioned coppering come together in a neat marriage of traditional and modern methods to identify, track down, and nail this fucker to the wall. This is the story of how Jordan McSweeney was caught by the Sweeney. This is Murder of Crows. Jordan Clive James McSweeney was born on the 26th of March 1993, and it would be fair to say that his early life was far from perfect. I'm not trying to mitigate what he would go on to do. I'm just setting the scene for someone who tries to overcome their challenges and obstacles in the wrong way. But even as a child, his behavior was challenging and he had serious issues with authority. His mother was a drug addict with little interest in being a mother. So McSweeney had little guidance, and it was very difficult for him to get any sort of attention, either positive or negative. He ended up being expelled from 2 schools, one of which was for selling drugs to other students. Like mother, like son. Then at some point he was sexually abused by a relative, and he was placed into the care system, being passed from pillar to post with very little affection or attention. It was clearly a very difficult start to life, but his response to it was to act out and use any means necessary to get what he needed. By the age of 13, he had already started bare knuckle fighting for money, as you do. He would also be diagnosed with, deep breath for a long list, ADHD, mixed depressive and anxiety disorder, substance misuse, and a personality disorder. But whether through lack of services or his own rejection of support, it seems he did not address the issues that life had thrown at him. In 2010, when he was 17, he was convicted of an attack against a young woman. It seemed that McSweeney was making his own misogynistic Neanderthal rules. Over the next few years, he racked up further offences, including burglary, criminal damage, assaults, shoplifting, and theft of a motor vehicle. For him, the courts had a revolving door that he was constantly circling, with no apparent sign of remorse or rehabilitation. It would seem that he had decided his way of life and didn't appear that he wanted to change it. It would be in 2021 that a series of events would start that seemed to suggest an escalating range of behaviours pointing towards something ultimately catastrophic happening. It wasn't a case of if, it seemed to be a case of when. So in 2021, McSweeney was given a restraining order preventing him from going near a certain woman after reports of abuse. This would also seem to run parallel to a prison sentence for criminal damage, racially aggravated harassment, and unauthorized possession of a knife. It's almost like he was trying to complete his nasty arsehole bingo card. On the 17th of June 2022, he would be released from prison on licence, with a requirement that he attend meetings with probation. Naturally, being a dick, he missed 2 meetings, and on the 22nd of June, probation services began the process of recalling him to prison. By this time in his life, he had 28 previous convictions for 69 separate offences. But when they went to McSweeney's mother's house to arrest the little cherub in the early hours of the 25th of June 2022, he wasn't there. He needed to be found before something really bad happened. Now, Zara Aleena couldn't have had a more different background to Jordan McSweeney. Zara's parents emigrated to Britain from Pakistan in 1968, and they went on to have 5 children. The family were extremely close-knit and supportive of each other, and they appreciated the importance of education. Zara arrived as the first grandchild in 1986, and she was doted on from the word go. With a supportive family around her, she knew quite early on that she wanted to pursue a career in the law. By early 2022, she had passed her solicitor's exams, and just a few weeks later, she very, very proudly started work at the Royal Courts of Justice. It was an administrative role, but equally was a foot in the door. When she sent her family a broadly grinning selfie on her first day of work in the hallowed halls, her aunt Farah Naz replied saying, "Soon, Zara, you're going to be a formidable force." Because that's just how the family supported each other and celebrated in each other's successes. By this point, Zara was living in Ilford and had a close group of friends, and things were definitely looking bright. About 5 weeks after starting her new job, on the 26th of June 2022, she went for a night out with her friend. They started the evening at a pub called the Great Spoon of Ilford for food and a drink, before moving on to another bar where Zara only drank water. Sometime that evening, around about 11 p.m, a man had been ejected from the Great Spoon of Ilford for groping a customer and harassing a bartender. That man was a very, very drunk Jordan McSweeney. Now, McSweeney wasn't in the mood to just head home and sleep it off. CCTV evidence showed the thuggish man wandering the streets and ominously seemed to follow several women during the course of the next couple of hours, including one poor woman who was pursued for upwards of 20 minutes. It seems that he wanted female attention that night. However, he had to get it. Having been chucked out of the pub at 11 and still not having found a playmate, willing or unwilling, by 2 a.m, McSweeney was obviously very angry and frustrated by this point. And that is when he saw Zara Aleena. Her friend had got a cab home, but because Zara lived locally, she decided to walk the short distance home. McSweeney followed her for a short distance, and at 2:15 a.m. he pounced. He dragged Zara from the pavement onto a driveway on Cranbrook Road in Ilford, and then went fucking nuts. He threw Zara to the ground, but she fought back and tried to get away. Then McSweeney knocked her to the ground again and parted her legs. She again fought back before he attacked her and pulled her back onto the ground yet again. He then knocked her unconscious and she stopped moving, at which point he sexually assaulted her. McSweeney then kicked and stamped on her with repeated heavy assaults. He was fully aware of what he was doing, as he was aware enough to duck out of sight when a passer-by came past the scene. McSweeney continued to stamp on Zara. He repeatedly stamped down on her body and head again and again, using the garden fence balustrade for balance. McSweeney stole some of her possessions and clothing, and these were left strewn and discarded along the street. Zara was discovered by two couples who just happened to have walked past, and paramedics were called. When they arrived, they tried to save her on the driveway where she was attacked for over an hour. She was partially naked and struggling to breathe, having sustained 46 separate injuries in the 9-minute beating. She was taken to the Royal London Hospital, but died later that morning from her injuries. Now, in case you missed it, Zara was left with 46 separate injuries, including blunt force trauma to the head, to the chest, and to the genital area. So at this point, the police had a crime scene. Forensics very quickly found a clear fingerprint on the fence balustrade next to where Zara had been attacked. But of course they needed a suspect to match it to. Early inquiries focused on working backwards from the crime scene to use one of modern policing's most potent weapons, CCTV. And London is known to have one of the most extensive areas of CCTV coverage in the world. So it was only a matter of time until both victim and attacker would show up within the coverage from that area on that night. and indeed they were right. But there is nothing to connect a video image to a fingerprint. So the middleman in this particular equation was to put a name to the sinister face from the CCTV. So the images were sent to all local officers, since they assumed that someone so violent would have crossed paths with law enforcement before, and of course they were right about that. But the grainy nature of the CCTV images meant that while the suspect pool could be considerably narrowed down, local knowledge could only narrow down that pool so far, which left them with around 6 suspects. But because all 6 were in the system, the details of all 6 were sent to the fingerprint experts along with the clear crime scene fingerprint. Very quickly, the fingerprint was found to be a 100% match to Jordan McSweeney. Now, this phenomenal chain of police work took just hours. And less than 24 hours on from the attack on Zara, McSweeney was arrested.
Jordan McSweeney?
That's on, yeah.
Can you stand up for us, mate?
Just tell him.
You're under arrest for rape and murder of a female at Cranbrook Road, okay, on the 26th of June 2022 in the early hours of the morning. You do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention, when questioned, something you later rely on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence. Do you understand? Right, stand up for us then, mate. Stand up.
Right?
Okay.
I've got it. Yep. Come forward.
Just going to search you now, alright? Yeah.
It is so nice to be able to report the good things that the police do, even though the circumstances are so desperately sad and senseless. 2 months after Zara's murder, a vigil and march were organised with attendees wearing white and walking Zara home. Attendees included friends and family of Zara, campaigners, local councillors, and members of the public. Cardboard placards were propped up against the steps of the town hall, bearing slogans such as "Enough is enough." The march went down Ilford High Street, past the station, past the takeaways and estate agents, and eventually reached Cranbrook Road and stopped opposite the driveway where Zara was killed. A laminated photo of her and a few bunches of flowers still sat on the pavement. Cranbrook Road is a wide road with large houses dotted with lampposts and buses and cars regularly going up and down. So it should have been a safe road to walk on at night. Of course, much of the spotlight after McSweeney's arrest fell upon the probation services.
In years, he racked up 28 convictions for 69 offences, including burglary and assaulting police officers. On the 17th of June last year, he was released from prison and missed his first probation appointment as he had passed out at his mother's address from the effects of alcohol. He missed 2 further appointments with probation officers on the 20th and 22nd of June. Probation workers signed a recall report 2 days later outside the 24-hour advised turnaround. This means police officers had the power to arrest him and return him to custody. 2 days later, he murdered Zara Aleena.
What sort of confidence can the public now have in their probation service?
I think public confidence will understandably be hit when they hear cases like this and Damien Bendel's case last week. There are broader systemic issues with probation at the moment, huge vacancy levels, particularly in London, and real problems around how they assess risks of harm and then manage risks of harm, which we're finding across the whole of England and Wales. So this wasn't an isolated case of things going wrong.
Last week's review into quadruple murderer Damien Bendel found probation failings at every stage. The boss of the union representing them stresses staff are doing their best.
It's not a good day for the probation service, nor was it last week when the other serious further offences reported. Our members feel it. They feel the pain of the victims' families, but they also feel the pain of not being able to do the job in the way they would like to do. And this is a fundamental problem that we've got to fix.
I am profoundly sorry for these failings.
An apology this afternoon from the Prisons and Probation Minister. But Zara Aleena's family are demanding action as they warn women and girls remain unsafe if probation is not doing its job.
Andrea Simon, director of the End Violence Against Women campaign, said, "What I feel with Zara's case really keenly is those missed opportunities. There were so many state failings, so many missed points where police or other agencies could have responded better to this dangerous man." Having pleaded guilty, the court proceedings proceeded directly to sentencing. The sentencing hearing took place on the 14th of December at the Old Bailey. And for that hearing, only one spot in the room remained empty, that spot being the dock. McSweeney refused to attend. His barrister told the court that he did not want to see the CCTV footage and relive that night. Oh, bless his delicate heart and fragile sensibilities. In the courtroom that afternoon, Zara's aunt, Farah Naz, appeared in the witness stand to deliver her victim impact statement, saying in part, "We are trapped in a constant loop of torturous images, nightmares. We are stuck in time. Sometimes we die with her, sometimes we are murdered. And sometimes we are trying to save her with our hands tied. How do we continue to believe in a society that breeds such violence towards women? How do we continue to have faith in systems that failed to protect her? To live in a community that didn't respond to her screams?" The judge sentenced McSweeney to life in prison, with a minimum term of 38 years.
The defendant, he put his arm around her and his hand between her legs before desisting. His licence has been revoked and he has been serving the remainder of his previous sentence while on remand, so there are no days to be counted against the sentence I pass today. I have taken care to avoid double counting. The sexual assault is a Category 1A offence because the defendant used violence and threats and abducted the victim from the street. There was a significant degree of premeditation because he wandered around the area until he found the ideal circumstances in which to commit the offence. This was a particularly violent sexual assault committed at night in a public place on a woman out alone. The defendant removed Miss Aleena's knickers and caused injuries to her genitalia, as well as the injuries that led to her death. The sentence for that offence of sexual assault, had I been dealing with it alone, would have been 6 years imprisonment. Taking into account his history of offending, had there not been a guilty plea, I would allow 1/3 discount for the plea. I take the view that this offence is already incorporated into the minimum term for murder because I have taken the higher starting point of 30 years and I reflect the aggravating features of it in the minimum term for the murder. Having been arrested on the 27th of June, the defendant was charged with murder and rape on the 29th of June. On reception in prison, he indicated that he could not comprehend that he had done what he had done. He appeared for a preliminary hearing on the 1st of July 2022, and his PTPH was set for the 30th of September 2022. Prior to the listing, the solicitors acting for the defendant wrote to the court to inform them that they had not received an expert report commissioned from a psychiatrist because the defendant had not seen him. Furthermore, owing to the industrial action being taken by the defence bar, his instructed advocate would not be present. Accordingly, I adjourned the hearing to the 19th of October, and an extension was given for service of the defence statement. The defendant failed, without a reasonable excuse, to attend 2 appointments with the psychologist on the 21st of September and the 3rd of October. His solicitors wrote to the court again to request a further adjournment. When the case came before the court for PTPH on the 19th of October, the defendant refused to attend, and it became apparent that he had not attended a conference that had been arranged with his solicitors. The defence were directed to secure the services of a psychologist who could provide a report as soon as possible, and the PTPH was adjourned to the 24th of October. On that date, the solicitors still did not have a report, and the PTPH was adjourned once again to the 11th of November. In the report of Dr. Black, which is dated the 26th of October, and which was, I'm sure, in the hands of the defence soon after that date, the defendant suggests that he did not remember what had happened, and he could not believe what he was seeing when shown the CCTV in interview. In fact, at the police interviews after arrest, the defendant affected a bored and disinterested facade. The defendant was not produced at the next hearing because he tested positive for COVID. The PTPH was put back to the 16th of November. Despite a direction that he attend in person, the defendant refused to come to court on the 16th of November, and a video link had to be arranged. The defence took instructions from the defendant and approached the prosecution about potential pleas, and this was indicated to the court. The PTPH was adjourned to the 19th of November, and on that occasion, the defendant pleaded guilty to the preferred 2-count indictment, murder and sexual assault. I accept that the defence solicitors commissioned expert reports to ensure there was no psychiatric defence to the charge of murder and to ensure fitness to plead and to be tried. These were responsible steps in a case of such gravity. I also accept that because of the action taken by criminal barristers, the defendant was not able to receive advice from junior barristers or King's Counsel until October this year. I reject the suggestion from the defence that because he was heard on a prison phone telling his mother that he was banged to rights, he should be taken to have indicated at a very, very early stage that he would accept responsibility for the killing. He never indicated this to the court until the 16th of November, and at stages, his non-engagement frustrated the work being done on his behalf. In addition, as Mr. Carter Stevenson accepted in his written submission on sentence, he caused some additional delay through taking a belligerent attitude when required to come to court, including telling the jailers on one occasion that there was no point in attending a hearing at which he was required. Overall, my conclusion is that the defendant is entitled to less than the maximum discount on the murder count, and I would allow 1/8, although given the length of the term I will impose, the maximum discount allowed can be 5 years. Considering all these features, after a trial, the minimum term would have been 43 years. I allow 5 years, as I have said, for the plea of guilty indicated via counsel on the 16th of November, a few weeks before trial. A sentence of 4 years concurrent is imposed for sexual assault. The sentence for the brutal, sexually motivated murder of Zara Aleena is imprisonment for life. The defendant will serve 38 years as the minimum term. The court would like to thank counsel and also to commend Mr. and Mrs. Condor, Georgina Woolard and Maria Bergen.
He is not present for the sentencing remarks because once again he refused to leave his cell. The judge described Zara as talented, intelligent, spirited and kind. Someone who was simply living her life in what most Londoners think of as the best city in the world. She did nothing wrong. And this echoed the concluding remarks of the prosecuting barrister, who said, Zara Aleena had every right to walk home. She had every right to expect to do so safely. And also echoed earlier comments from the senior investigating officer, who said simply, she had every right to be there. The substantial minimum sentence was a relief for Zara's family, but nothing could truly provide comfort. Zara's aunt Farah Naz once again said, the only way for us to survive is to campaign for Zara's name to live on through change in society. Now, heartbreakingly, McSweeney had his sentence reduced on appeal in November of this year.
The family of a trainee solicitor who was raped and murdered by a known sexual predator says the cutting of his sentence sends a disheartening message to women. Zara Aleena was in the wrong place at the wrong time when Jordan McSweeney decided to attack. Today, the Court of Appeal cut the minimum length of his life sentence from 38 to 33 years. The judges said that the fact McSweeney had knocked her out before the worst of the attack meant Miss Aleena's suffering would not have been as great as the trial judge decided.
Zara Aleena was an aspiring lawyer who dreamt of one day changing a system she knew was letting women down. The same system that her family said today failed Zara before she could begin. After 3 senior appeal court judges ruled her killer's sentence could be cut short by 5 years.
It's that feeling that somehow women are not being prioritised.
Farah Naz, Zara's aunt, told me she was disappointed by the judgment.
It's a hollow victory for him. And it's, a shallow triumph. It's not, he hasn't won anything. He's still got a life sentence. We can be reassured that the prospect of him being released in 33 years remains slim.
You're under arrest for rape and murder.
This is the sexual predator who killed Zara, Jordan McSweeney, not long out of prison and with a history of violence against women. CCTV showed him stalking at least 5 women that night in June 2022, before he attacked and murdered Zara as she walked home in East London after a night out. He was jailed last December for at least 38 years. Today, reduced to 33, after 3 senior judges ruled the original sentence was, in their words, manifestly excessive. Giving that ruling, Lady Chief Justice Lady Carr said, having correctly found that Ms. Aleena must have been rendered unconscious at an early stage in the attack, the original sentencing judge had lacked a sufficient evidential basis on which to be sure that there had been additional mental or physical suffering, such as to justify an increase in the 30-year starting point. Human rights lawyers and campaigners say this judgment comes when trust in the criminal justice system is at an all-time low.
Failures at every level of the system, from policing to prosecuting to the whole parole and probation system. What we're seeing is a very endemic violence against women with a very limited criminal justice response.
Zara's family say justice can only be fully served when women stop being failed. Sejal Karia, News at 10.
It was reduced from a minimum term of 38 years to a minimum of 33 years. In a statement, Zara's family said, "Today's decision, a decision to reduce the minimum sentence for that repugnant man, aligns with an established legal sentencing framework, a framework that we do comprehend. Yet the message it conveys to women is disheartening, suggesting that a life sentence may not truly mean a lifetime behind bars. But it is, in all honesty, a shallow triumph for him. Despite his sentencing to a minimum of 33 years, his time in incarceration has been marred by abhorrent conduct, marked by a lack of remorse and a callous attitude towards others. The prospect of his release after 33 years remains slim, but naturally we hope he remains imprisoned for life. McSweeney is currently being held at the incredibly famous Belmarsh prison. So there we have the terrifying case of a man who was clearly on a mission. There is little I can say other than this violent arsehole is absolutely where he belongs. A truly special woman was taken from the world way too soon, and in an abhorrent and vile manner. The police work was exceptional and allowed this disgusting predator to be captured quickly and efficiently. This video is, of course, dedicated to Zara Aleena, who was on a path to become a power for good within the legal system. Her senseless murder was a stain on the UK, and we need to see it as a wake-up call to look out for each other, protect each other, and really just do better as people. Thank you for watching another episode of Murder of Crows. I'm Steve, Samson is over there having a pout because he attacked me a couple of minutes ago, and now, because I got a bit cross about it, he's a bit upset. Oh, you gonna come say goodbye to people? You coming up? No? Alright then. So yes, with all of that said, I'm Steve, and I'll see you when I see you.